This is Sal, and you are listening to the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast on the BS Podcast Network.
In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Mental wounds not healing, life's a bitter shame. I'm going off the rails on a crazy train. I'm going off the rails on a crazy train. Let's go.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today is Thursday, March 16th, and we are approaching St. Patrick's Day. Any of you guys Irish? Sal, I know you're clearly Irish.
My mother is part Irish, by the way. She's my mother is Irish and Italian, so what we do celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Her name is Patricia, and you know how these Catholics are. You know that means it's part of Patrick, and she likes to celebrate it as her name day. I don't go in for all that jazz, but I try to make mom happy.
So you have a couple of drinks, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, tip a few back.
Tip a few back. Nice. Steve, you look Irish, but I'm going to guess you're not.
That would actually be false.
Oh.
The looks go with what I actually am. I do have a bunch of Irish in me. I can't escape it.
Hey-o.
Get 'em out.
Hey-o.
Whoa.
Like leprechauns or like
not sitting down. Yeah, so I have been celebrating. I started celebrating this morning as soon as March Madness kicked off.
nice.
So it's been a long Thursday, let me tell you.
I'm sure.
So
it
what you're
has.
saying is at 12:15 on the East Coast, where it's noon and you were fully in the brew, enjoying some March Madness.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If I'd heard most of what you just said.
Yeah, a lot of that was
might
broken up, but we're gonna go with
might have.
basic premise here is that Steve started drinking at 9 a.m. So listen, welcome to the show. This is the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. We are getting started off on the wrong foot, but hopefully we can improve for you guys here. Tomorrow is
Have we ever gotten off on the right foot?
No,
Ever?
no, absolutely not. Tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day. I hope all of you will be celebrating, but it is a great time of year for sports in general. As Steve mentioned, the March Madness has kicked off, so hopefully brackets, by the time you guys listen to this, your brackets aren't busted already. Steve, how's your bracket doing? I know you're a big bracket guy, so.
Yes, I love March Madness. I'm a huge fan of the tournament, the brackets, all that kind of stuff. And so far, my bracket has not been too bad. I've only got a team. There haven't been any upsets yet. So there's been no day one bracket busters going on.
There was a 12-5 today.
There's always a
Middle
12-5.
Tennessee State.
Yeah,
There's always a 12. I got to tell you, of the 12-5 matchups there were this year, obviously there were 4 of them. Middle Tennessee State was not even an upset in Vegas. This was not. They were not a team that were expected to lose. So that them winning today was not very much of a surprise. I did pick Minnesota, so that was one of the losses I had today. But them winning, I was not surprised that it happened, and Vegas was not surprised that it happened. So even though it was a 12-5, they're becoming so common and almost becoming so predictable that they're not even surprising anymore.
All right, despite the fact that Steve is doing nothing but drinking and watching basketball, there is some football news to talk about, so we should probably get into that, considering this is a fantasy football podcast, right? It is still that, right? We didn't change.
I don't remember anymore.
Oh.
That's novel.
All right. Well, I mean, no one's doing it, Sal. We're gonna be huge. Huge. All right, so free agency has rolled on. Last time we spoke to the people in the audience, we had a couple of signings, a couple of things happening. I think Brandon Marshall had moved to the Jets, but that wasn't a ton, and we got some more moves to talk about today, guys. So let's get right into it. Tyrod Taylor agreed to restructure his contract, so not really a free agent, but he restructured his contract, so it looks like he's going to be staying in Buffalo for, well, at least 1 year.
Impressive.
Yeah.
That is impressive. I mean, good on them for getting that deal worked out and all switched around, because he was set to make quite a hefty sum of money this year. So I think they both wanted to get it worked out where he might actually be able to play, have a team already for this season, although he did take a pretty good pay cut, and it doesn't have any of the guarantees going forward, like you said, just the 1 year. But I think it works for them. I think he likes being in Buffalo, and I always like it when a player bets on themselves, much like Alshon Jeffrey did with his 1 year contract in Philadelphia.
Hey, we'll get there. Relax.
Hey, we talked about Alshon Jeffrey last week.
Oh, good.
Come on.
Good.
We didn't talk about Eddie Lacy last week, so we can talk about him, another
Wow.
guy on a 1 year contract. But yeah, so if you guys listened to the podcast last year, you know I'm not a huge Tyrod Taylor fan, just because I don't think the offense in Buffalo really translate well to fantasy numbers in a typical redraft league where you don't have all kinds of crazy custom scoring. But I do think that he is a good fit there. And I am starting to kind of come around on him, because as the more leagues I play in that do have those custom scoring, he does become more enticing. So I like the fit for them. And I just wish that they would maybe throw the ball a little bit more and put a little bit more on his shoulders and see what he could do with that.
So we
Crazy that he doesn't like him, and today he was like, I hope this bid holds up for Tyrod Taylor. I need him. Only a few minutes away.
Money changes a man, all right?
Listen, we talked about Tyrod Taylor a lot last year, like you said, and I was obviously higher on him than you. And the reason was because of the floor, right? I think his legs and the running ability makes his floor a little higher than most. Even if you're talking about standard scoring, not standard. We don't play standard anymore, PPR, whatever format you're playing in. Even if it's just regular without the crazy points per carry or things like that, he's going to get points because he's probably going to get around 50 yards on the ground. That's 5 points right there. That makes his floor pretty high comparatively. So that's why I liked him. I'd like to see him get healthy. I agree with you. I'd love to see him throw the ball a little bit more. I just don't think that's really his game. I think he protects the ball well, and I think he runs pretty well and sets up other areas of the offense for the team. So, but I do like Tyrod Taylor. I do like him in that offense, and hopefully he'll have a big year, and they'll give him a decent contract that'll last a couple of years and maybe have some more money guaranteed. All right, the 49ers, Sal. Brian Hoyer is going to be a QB over there. Matt Barkley, interestingly enough, followed him over there as well. Pierre Garçon is a wide receiver. Marquise Goodwin, wide receiver. So what do you think about what 49ers have done so far? Is there anything relevant in 49erville yet? Our friend Peachy really wants to know.
Well, I think they'll be more relevant than they were last year. I don't think this will be the finished product. Obviously, this is the first year for Shanahan, and he's going to put in some pieces that will get him through the next year or so. Back, they wait out a Kirk Cousins and get him next year in free agency. So I think that Hoyer is a stopgap type of thing. I think Garçon still got a lot of life left in him. He's had some Washington. I mentioned recently 2 years ago he had 100, I believe, led the league. And Marquise Goodwin is a guy that he hasn't been a big flashy player, but like I said to you guys, him on the air, I've grabbed in three different best balls in the last round. The guy is lightning quick. He is going to likely play that Tyler Gabriel role in Shanahan's offense, and he's intriguing. So if you're looking for an early flyer, a guy to take a shot on, that'll probably be sitting there. They gave him a contract, gave him money. They're going to use him, right, Steve? Don't they use people when they give them contracts?
Evidently.
So I'm interested, and don't forget, also gave a nice contract to Vance McDonald, I believe, not that long ago. So they have parts in place for this offense. I expect it to be a much better offense. They still have Carlos Hyde coming back. So I think you'll see a big change this year now. Can they play defense? We'll have to wait and find out.
We will have to see that. So moving along here, the New England Patriots quietly...
Oh, yes, let's talk about how much better they've gotten.
Very quietly, if you will. Probably not actually quietly. They're having one of the best off seasons that I've ever seen, to be quite honest with you, and as a fan of the team. It's really, they've added Dwayne Allen via trade from Indianapolis. They add Brandon Cooks via trade from New Orleans. And who else do they have in the fold here? Rex
Dwayne
Burkhead.
Allen, Rex Burkhead.
Rex Burkhead, who everyone has given me crap about, including you, Steve, and then all of a sudden now he's like your new Binky.
I'll tell you what, I am excited to see what can happen with Rex Burkhead because of how I was able to nab him in a recent auction we are all taking part in. I feel like I got him for a pretty cheap price, and then a few hours later it came out that he signed with New England. So I'll tell you what, I didn't have much faith in him beforehand. You know, he's the third string running back in Cincinnati last year, but I'm all about jumping on the hype train now. I'm excited to see what he can do in New England. Everyone talks about how he's such a perfect fit there and how he's going to really, give everyone a run for their money for the first and second down back work. And so, yeah, I want to see what can happen. And at the price that I got him at, I am all in. I will jump on the bandwagon and I will join you there, Kev. I'm there.
So
let me tell you my feelings on the Patriots offseason. So the Patriots are like that really good looking guy who has a ton of money, who comes over and he steals your girlfriend right out from under you, and then the pictures come out of him sleeping with your girlfriend, and he's got a big penis too on top of it. So that's the type of offseason the Patriots are having.
I can't even. All right, so here's the deal. We talked about this a little bit, Steve, and I think I'm not on the bandwagon. I mean, I'm on the bandwagon from a standpoint that I'm a fan of this team, and I think he adds a great piece to the offense. But from a fantasy perspective, I am actually completely the opposite. I'm not on that bandwagon at all, and I'll tell you why. That's a lot of backs in the backfield and not a lot of rushes to go around. To me, you're talking about a team that ran the ball 460 times or so last year. If I'm remembering correctly, that's off the top of my head, so hopefully that's correct.
Sounds exactly right to me.
But look, it's 482. Sorry. So that's not a lot, right? That's not a lot of rushing, and you're talking about a team with Deion Lewis. I know everyone expects him to get hurt, but there is a chance that he makes it through the season. James White is still in the fold for the next season. I don't think we don't know whether or not they're going to bring back LeGarrette Blount or any other bigger type back, and if they do, that hurts it even more. I don't see that many carries for him, and I think that he can be usable in third down situations, but I think you're going to see more James White than anything else in that, and it just makes me nervous, the volume that you're going to see for a guy that, look, you're obviously not depending on him as a number one back, Steve. I mean, there's no question. I think on that auction league, you have a couple of very solid options in front of him, right?
Yes.
So,
yes, I do.
So no one's expecting him to be an RB1 or even maybe an RB2. So as a flex play, he's great. I don't love the fit with New England as far as a fantasy perspective, because I think, again, it's like every other running back. You can't trust New England running backs. You just don't know who's going to do what on any given day, and I think he falls right into that trap. Whereas, like I said before he signed, if he's the guy that can get some opportunity, I think he's got talent, and I really think that he can be, a good back that gets 180 to 200 carries, maybe even more, and really produces from a fantasy perspective and could be a full-on RB2. But I don't know. We'll see. I think the same discussion could be had about Brandon Cooks. Sal, what do you think about his signing with the Patriots? Personally, I don't think it definitely doesn't increase his value in my mind. I think it probably either decreases it or at most is a lateral move.
Yeah, it's another one of those really good NFL moves for a team, right? He helps solidify that offense, but I don't think it increases his value. I don't at all, and it probably does hurt it a little bit. I mean, Edelman will be the guy who gets the reception totals as per usual. You got a young guy in Malcolm Mitchell who came on last year, who I really was hoping for bigger things from going forward next year. I have him in our original Falafel League. I'll not be holding him now as a keeper. That was something I was contemplating because I had a really good value, but I won't be holding on to him now for that. And then you have they always have some spare parts that come around. Like you're saying, you have three running backs who all catch the ball. You have Gronk. You have Dwayne Allen. There's the same old lot of mouths to feed in New England, and I don't remember the last wide receiver since Randy Moss, I guess, that was huge in New England, like a wide receiver one, huge. So he's not going to be a wide receiver one, in my opinion. Likely a wide receiver two.
I definitely don't disagree with any of that. And much to the point, all the points that Kev just made about the running backs, the same thing holds true for the wide receivers. They spread the ball out to so many people in New England that one week, Brandon Cooks could have 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, but the next week he could have 3 catches for 40 yards and that be it. So I agree. I would say it's probably more of a lateral move more than anything. It'll be definitely interesting to see how much the hype on him grows coming into the season. I know last year he was a second-round pick in redraft leagues, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him going somewhere around there again this year. And it'll probably, just like last year, be a little too rich for my blood, and I'll probably end up having to pass on him.
All right, so we move on. Kenny Stills re-signs with the Dolphins. Not sure that really... I don't know. I don't think it makes much of a difference, to be honest with you. I'm not a big Kenny Stills guy myself. Either of you guys really into Kenny Stills?
I wouldn't say I'm into him, but...
There's more into the Irish.
I'm just not into Ryan Tannehill as a quarterback is my bigger problem with Kenny Stills. So
I believe you said the Irish are into him.
Yeah, get it right.
Yeah.
I was big on Stills last year. I spoke about him a lot.
How did that work out?
I had him in a few leagues. He did well. I mean, the guy had a good season. Go back and look. He led the team in touchdown receptions, I believe, and he got himself a nice payday. He did enough to at least get discussed at $12 million a year, and we all scoffed at that. And it turns out he only got $8 a year. Which, when you say only, that's for guys like him, not for guys like you and me. But I think
you make way more than that, Sal.
Yeah, I mean this weekend. So I think it'll be more of the same for Kenny Stills. Kenny Stills is a big play threat down the field. Nice best ball play in a deeper league, where you have to start multiple flexes maybe. I didn't protect him in that one league that we're in, Kevin, and I lost him in a dispersal draft, and I'm kind of like, meh. All right, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's career average is a 16.7 yards per reception, so it's pretty solid. 42 catches, 726 yards, and 9 touchdowns last year. So the 9 touchdowns really helped him, and to me, that's the problem, right? I don't think he's going to get 9 touchdowns again, and
coming.
Yeah, I don't know that he gets more than the yardage that he had. So. To me, he's going to be a little worse for the weary. I also, I think Devontae Parker does take a little bit of a step forward in that offense, and again, sort of, establishes himself as the more talented guy, which I think he is. So, and then again, to Steve's point, you have Tannehill as a quarterback. So,
as funny as it was last year, I hated Parker so much. I was not a huge fan of him, but this year I am going to be trying to acquire him in just about every draft that I take part in. I feel the same way, Kev. I think he's going to take a pretty big step this year. And going back to Kenny Stills real quick, he did have those 9 touchdowns, and I know for a fact you guys can probably remember at least 2 or 3 that he dropped that were just wide open touchdowns because he's got a little bit of a hands issue. So it could have been even more. Huh? It's a little touchy-feely, a little too much for my liking.
All right.
But what does that say for Leonte Carew in Miami? As a guy who they drafted, who everybody had high hopes for, you'd figure if they were going to let him make the jump up this year, they wouldn't have re-signed a guy like Stills at that value. So, do you think that he fades a little bit, or you think it's just he needs a little bit more time to make the next leap?
He's still very fast. That's about all I can say about him.
That's not bad. That's not a bad thing.
So's Kenny Stills.
It's got Marquise Goodwin money.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think that's the point, Sal. I mean, I don't know that they really would have paid $8 million a year for Kenny Stills if they thought that Carew was someone that could fill that spot. So I think it's probably a sign that, in dynasty leagues, I don't know if I'm cutting bait on Carew because he's probably at the end of your roster. So why not keep him on there? I think he's better than anything that's probably out there in free agency, unless you're in a really shallow league. But I don't have too high of hopes for him. All right, let's keep moving along here. Deshaun Jackson. I'm not sure if we talked about this last week, but our own Sal Lito mentions that Deshaun Jackson is going to sign with Tampa Bay, or at least that he thinks he should sign with Tampa Bay, and lo and behold, he does. What do you think, Sal? I
don't want to take too much credit for that.
Well, rumor has it that you actually broke your wrist patting yourself on the back for that.
I don't want to take too much credit for that because I think it was kind of out there a lot in fantasy Twitter and stuff like that. I thought that I was leaning a little bit more to Philadelphia, But those were the two places that I had said I heard he might be going to. So I think it's a great fit. Jameis Winston came out and said he wanted him. He got him. Deshaun Jackson is a guy, as you know, that plays with a chip on his shoulder. I think knowing that he was wanted, he's going to go there. He's going to be looking to produce. He'll be very happy. And he's a completely different receiver than Evans. So I think that they really work well together. And I don't know if Vincent Jackson will still be there this year. I don't know if he was let go or not. So I think the path is wide open for him. And I think that you can get 2 to 3 more years out of this guy where he is in his career. He's in good shape. He's not that old. And I think it's going to be a nice fit for him.
I completely agree. I think that the fit, next to Mike Evans is going to be huge for him. How many times
Has he...
Huge on this podcast.
Huge. How many, or has he ever been in a place where he's not been like the wide receiver? I know in Philadelphia he was kind of the guy, and then in Washington
was he the guy in Washington, though?
For the most part, I would say he was their biggest threat.
I think he was the highest paid. I don't know that he was the biggest threat. I mean, Pierre Garçon had pretty good seasons next to him, and I don't know. I guess
even in Philly, he shared the spotlight with Jeremy Maclin for 2 seasons as well. But I know what you're saying. He likes to think of himself as that number one guy, Steve.
That's correct. Yes.
That I would agree with. I just don't know if he's played side by side with a caliber wide receiver like Mike Evans is, and so I'm very, very interested to see what he does this season.
That I agree with. Absolutely.
A producer just told me that it was actually Steve Marcus last week that made the statement that Deshaun Jackson would likely sign with Tampa Bay or would be a good fit with Steve. So thank you to the producers for in my earpiece letting me know that was the.
We actually discussed that pre-show, and they said to make sure Sal said it because that was more interesting and more people cared. But
that is actually how that went down.
Yeah,
it's true. I made a point, and they said, "You know what? That's a great point, but it would sound a lot better coming from Sal."
That's right.
So we made sure to make that change.
Right.
You think anybody believes we have producers?
Yeah.
I mean, my sound quality has been a little crappy tonight. So
that's right.
If we have producers, you're fired.
He's fired after tonight. All right. The Bears have added Mike Glennon. So Mike Glennon finally lands. I think we talked about him potentially going to the Jets, but he ends up with the Bears. I don't mind the fit there. I think it's a cheap deal. Did we talk about this last week? Can someone remind me?
I often wonder if Kevin
last week's
listens.
No, I don't think I was here.
I believe we mentioned Glennon, but we didn't talk about some of the signings since then, right? They signed a couple of wide receivers to go along with him.
Yes.
Anyone? Martavis Bryant joined the fold.
What?
Is that correct?
Marcus
Bryant.
I was going to say Marcus Wheaton, and yes, I believe we did talk about that one too, actually. Martavis Bryant is still in no man's land.
I bet you everybody will be paying attention now, won't
That's right.
they?
Let's just move along, I think, is what the best thing is here. Robert Woods with the Rams. I don't know if we discussed that, but that's they gave him a lot of money. I don't think that he will do a ton. Eagles bring in Torrey Smith. We talked about that a little bit. Ted Ginn signs with the Saints, so they replace. They replace
Brandon Cooks.
Brandon Cooks, thank you, Steve, with Ted Ginn. What do you think about that, Steve?
This falafel train is stuck in the station right now.
Way off track.
Let's see if we can get it moving again. Steve, how would you like to talk about Ted Ginn replacing Brandon Cooks in New Orleans?
I'm gonna say it's a little bit of a downgrade. I don't really put too much stock into it. Wasn't a big Ted Ginn fan coming into this season, even when he was in Carolina. He's a big play guy. Never know when he's going to hurt you when you start him or when he's going to really help you. So I try to avoid those types of players. I will be avoiding Ted Ginn yet again.
All right, so here's another one I know we have not talked about. Martellus Bennett signs with Green Bay, Sal. This is a tight end that they're bringing in yet again to try and find a usable tight end. What do you think? What do you think about that?
I long for the days of Mark Shamora. Yeah, Green Bay has been on its eternal search to find a good tight end to go with Aaron Rodgers, and I spoke out about how I think Martellus Bennett is going to mail it in after he gets his payday. Wasn't expecting him to land in Green Bay. It's a good fit for him. If he comes in with the right attitude and he meshes well with Aaron Rodgers, this could be a really big signing, and he could be a really big play this year. So right now I'm reconsidering some of the statements I made, but I just know his personality. Martellus Bennett and his brother, for that matter, are guys that they like. It's similar to Deshaun Jackson. They want to feel like they're needed. They want to be praised. They want to feel like they're the guy. So I think it all depends on his reception when he gets into town and how he's looked at in that offense and how he's treated. We'll have a ton to say with how he's going to play this year.
Steve, any further thoughts on Martellus Bennett?
No, I think it's a pretty good a good fit for Green Bay and for Martellus Bennett. We saw the chemistry that kind of started to form between Aaron Rodgers and Jared Cook towards the end of last season. So I think if he gets someone in there that's solid, that can stay healthy, and they can get a good chemistry going, I think that the tight end position in Green Bay is something that can be very fantasy relevant. So I definitely will be keeping an eye on that. I agree, or I hear what Sal's saying about his personality and that type of thing, but I think from him going to a Super Bowl team to another potential Super Bowl winning team does a lot for him, I think, as opposed to him going to maybe the Rams or the Browns or someone like that wouldn't really have a chance. I could definitely see him mailing it in. So I would be excited to see what he's going to be able to do. And speaking of Jared Cook, he actually signed a contract today with Sal's Oakland Raiders. So I'd be interested to see what he thinks of Jared Cook going to the land where tight ends go to die.
Oh, is that like looking out along in the Lion King when you look out into the land? We don't go there.
Yeah, it's called Oakland.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, listen, let's see what happens. Jared Cook is a guy who's had all kinds of promise his entire career and has shown those flashes, like the big reception he made to help eliminate the Cowboys from the playoffs this year. I like the signing. I like that the Raiders are going out there and adding pieces. I mean, they have Clive Walford there. He's going into his third year. A lot of talk was about him last year. I was high on him last year. He did not produce the way I had hoped. But I think having the two of them there could be a really nice fit for this offense. So happy he's there. Not super, super excited. I'll take the wait-and-see approach with him. But he'll probably be a guy, as a Raider fan, I'd like to grab late as a number 2 tight end with the chance that he can possibly become a number 1 guy, like a low-end number 1 tight end this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be touching an Oakland tight end if you paid me. No matter.
I don't know that too many of them are going to pay you to do it.
That's true. All right, so Eddie Lacy signs with the Seahawks to play
You're just
offensive
going to
line.
skip over Cordarrelle Patterson signing with the Raiders? You're just going to skip right over that?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, good.
Not many people play with kick return yards, Sal. All right.
Eddie Lacy signs with the Seahawks to play offensive line, which would have been a good joke if you had let me finish it the first time. Now it's useless. Apparently, he signs a $5.5 million 1-year deal. Like I think $3 million or so is guaranteed, and then he promptly weighed in at 267 pounds. Sal, you talked about it off air that they may let him play a little heavier, but doesn't that make you nervous?
Yeah, so I have a lot invested in Eddie Lacy. I have him currently in 3 dynasty leagues, and I like the guy, and I want to see him succeed. I think he's a good dude. I don't have any reason to dislike him, so I'm hoping for the best with him. I don't think they want him at 267. I think they want him more down in the 250, 255 range, which may not seem like a lot, but it is. 12 pounds is a big deal at that size. But I seen an article today, and a lot of people are talking about how they want him to play that beast mode role. They want him to come in and be that Marshawn Lynch type of runner. Now, he's not Marshawn Lynch, right? There's a certain mentality you have as a running back. You can't instill that in someone. They're born with that. Thomas Rawls has the makeup to do that exact type of style of running. But I'm very interested to see what happens if he does take on that role and is successful doing it. So I've invested in him. I got him reasonably priced at a few places, and I'm hoping to see him succeed.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern with Seattle now, besides the 267 pounds and the fact that he could eat a lot of scones at Starbucks out there, is that there's also a couple of good running backs on the roster in Rawls and Procise, guys that most of the people in the fantasy world were picking sides to begin with anyway. Now you add another back to that rotation. I don't know who's going to do what. I think Procise, I'm a Procise guy. I think he was the most talented out of the group. I think that I was hoping for him. He was a guy I was looking to buy, not low, but still, fairly low in a lot of leagues if I could, just because I thought he was going to ultimately take over this year. And he still might, but depending on how Lacy does come in. But at the very least, the beginning of the season, there's going to be 3 of them, and they're going to rotate. So, but hard to imagine that Seahawks give Lacy $5.5 million, and they're not going to use him a lot. So, I think that they will rotate, but I think it'll be mostly Lacy, at least in the beginning, and that scares me for the other 2 guys for one, but also for Lacy because I just don't think he can handle it.
I'm pretty sure he could have signed anywhere and had scones at Starbucks. There's a lot of those in this country.
That's very true.
And their offensive line is still terrible. The Seahawks haven't done anything to really shore up that offensive line, and they had so many problems with it last year, keeping Russell Wilson safe and upright, so he's not running for his life every single play, and their running game was not very good last year. And so that's still one of my bigger concerns. And then obviously, like you said, he comes in. They had 2 running backs there. Now they have 3. So obviously the production is going to be diminished between the other 2 as well. It'll definitely be interesting to see how it comes out. I do think Procise, of the 2 running backs that were there, his role does seem a little more steady as the passing down back because Eddie Lacy probably will not be used like that at all. So he still does that role kind of shored up, but definitely we'll want to see how it goes. And if anything, it might knock Procise's value down a little bit. He might be able to get him a little bit cheaper.
Steve, let the Russell Wilson hate go, man. Let it go.
Not happening.
All right, one
Not
more.
Gonna happen.
One more here. Latavius Murray signs with the Vikings, it appears. Any thoughts on that? Yep.
They've got offensive line problems too.
I think he leaps. For me, I think he leaps over Jerick McKinnon in that offense. I don't think they were comfortable with McKinnon being the lead guy there. Right now, if Scott Fish is listening, whenever he does listen, he's going to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm going to say a lot of McKinnon truthers out there.
So let's see what happens. He produced a lot of touchdowns last year, but he was put in a position a lot in short yardage to do that in Oakland. I think Murray's going to be an RB2 this year in Minnesota, and a fantasy RB2, and I think he'll be the lead guy.
All right. I tend to agree with you there. I don't know that you can expect much more than an RB2. I think on most weeks he'll probably end up in a flex for me. But all right, that's it for signings, unless I missed anything else, which I'm sure I have.
Cordarrelle Patterson, sorry with the Raiders.
Besides Cordarrelle Patterson, no one cares. Steve, any actual ones that I missed?
You didn't mention Donta Hightower getting signed also by the Patriots. I know it's a defensive move, so not very fantasy relevant, but it's just another way that they got even better.
They also signed Stephen. Oh, we went over that too because you wanted to be called Stephen Gilmore.
Yes,
right.
Yes, that's right.
It's all coming back to me now.
Kev, one guy that you and I liked last year, Adam Thielen, he re-signed a 3-year deal with Minnesota. I like that for him. I think it's good that he's staying there. There was rumors possibly, I think more than rumors, Alshon Jeffrey was offered a contract there, turned it down. That would have killed Thielen's value because that moves Diggs down a little bit, and the rookie that they drafted there last year also. So I like Thielen to stay there and be like a wide receiver 3 to flex and deep flex leagues. Again, good reception guy, and interesting to see how he's continued to be used.
Yeah, he's a guy that is really interesting to me because I think he can be anything from a wide receiver 3, like you said, to up to into a wide receiver 2. He's a guy that I could see having sort of a breakout and actually doing some more. So I'm not expecting it. I'm not saying to just pay too much for him, but as a guy, he's definitely a guy that I'd be looking for in most drafts late.
And just one more, Kev, I would like to know Terrell Pryor. We did not talk about him going over from leaving Cleveland and signing a deal in Washington. So he is teaming up with Kirk Cousins. He is taking over Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon. They left the team like we already talked about. So what do you think about Terrell Pryor going to Washington?
Yeah, I think it's a good move for him, right? He doesn't have to play in Cleveland anymore. He goes to a quarterback who's clearly throwing the ball all over the place, although I still think he's not very good.
It's good.
No, he's not. Look, I've admitted I was a little wrong on Cousins. I still, he's still not a top 10 for me. I mean, fantasy-wise, I guess he is because they throw the ball a ton. But no, I think the Terrell Pryor signing is great for both of them. I think it helps, replace Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon, although I do think that offense is going to take a step back, and I don't think you're going to see Kirk Cousins throw for 5,000 yards again. So.
Well, I actually have a couple I'll bring up. Lance Dunbar signed with the Rams. I've been a proponent that Todd Gurley will have a bounce back year. I wanted to see the Rams use Gurley specifically more in the passing game. With a guy like Lance Dunbar going there, I guess that probably scales that back a bit. What do you guys think?
I don't think it'll have
I think
much
if
of a
they
difference.
gave him money, they're going to use him.
Oh,
if
here
they
he
sign
goes.
him in there, there's no way that Todd Gurley's going to catch passes because they've got Lance Dunbar, pass catch specialist out of the backfield there. So
listen,
yeah.
can we just I'd like a note, like the producer to note to cut that and save it where he said that Gurley will not catch passes. I think that's
I was
wrong.
being sarcastic.
I disagree.
He's mocking me.
Yeah,
He's mocking me going back
listen.
to my Bilal Powell and Matt Forte that they're both making similar money and that they'll use Powell. And guess what? Powell was the better back by the second half of the year last year, you poop sticker.
Yeah, he was just a year behind on that statement, Steve. So, all right. Listen, Lance Dunbar. I will say this though: they did sign Andrew Whitworth to play offensive line, which may actually help Todd Gurley if they can actually have some semblance of a blocking tackle. So, there's that.
Yes, I much like Sal said, proponent of Todd Gurley. I too am still on the Todd Gurley bandwagon this year, hoping that you can get him a little cheaper because of his bad year last year, and then he's going to come back. He's going to do just fine. He's going to be an RB1 this year.
All right, here's another guy, and tell me what this means in Pittsburgh. Justin Hunter signed the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so last year we knew there's Antonio Brown, and then there's the rest. Martavis Bryant, who I mistakenly said before instead of Marcus Wheaton. Wheaton is gone. Martavis Bryant has not technically been reinstated yet, as I believe, but we all expect that he will be back this year. Eli Manning. Eli Rogers is a guy we both liked last year. He's the guy that you grabbed from me, I believe, in the dispersal draft. I left him unprotected. Sammy Coates kind of fizzled, as Steve would like to say, fizzled out last year. What does this mean for those other guys with Justin Hunter coming in there? Do any of these guys hold relevancy with that crowded of a wide receiver core?
Yeah, I think someone's going to step up, right? I don't know who it is exactly, but I think one of them's going to step up. Eli Rogers is the guy that I'm sort of targeting because I think that at the very least in that slot role, I think he can have some value because there should be a decent catch volume. But ultimately, I don't think that the signing of Justin Hunter really means anything, to be quite honest with you. The guy's top year is 28 receptions for 498 yards. So there's not really a whole lot to be excited about when you're talking about Justin Hunter. I think it's more, if anything, maybe it says that they're not really expecting Martavis Bryant to come back. And they're kind of bolstering the position by bringing in Hunter because they don't expect to have him in the fold. But I think, Coates, Hunter, those are guys that, and who's the third one that's going to be useless?
Eli Rogers.
Nope, not Eli Rogers. Sal, anyone?
No, because Marcus Wheaton left. So I don't know who else. I don't even know who else they have.
There was another big wide receiver that popped up last year. Was making plays at the end of the year. His name escapes me.
Yeah,
he was a guy who popped late in the season. But hey, so before we move on, two more guys who have not signed anywhere. The week has gone by, and Adrian Peterson and Jamal
Bay.
Charles
Sorry.
still have no job.
Hayward Bay.
Oh,
sorry.
Hayward Bay is he's poop.
Yes,
but that was not the guy I was talking about. There was another young guy last year who looked a lot like Sammy Coates. His name is escaping me right now, but none of them will be relevant anyway. Here's a tip: draft Antonio Brown.
Yeah,
there you go.
You don't get that. You don't get that on every podcast, by the way. That's an exclusive falafel tip.
Soon to
Jamal
be
Charles was
paying premiums for that kind of advice.
Right.
he was in Seattle, which again would blow my mind if Seattle was to sign him. But they had him in after Eddie Lacy signed, and still took a look at him. But I don't think he'll sign there. And the rumors now for Adrian Peterson shift back to Oakland and also the Detroit Lions. So what are your guys' feelings on those two guys as we go into another full week of free agency without two big name running backs being signed?
For me, I'd say having him go to Oakland, Adrian Peterson, that is, would, from a fantasy standpoint, be his best case scenario. They've got one of the best offensive lines in football, and so for him to go there to be coupled with a passing attack, that would really has to keep defenses honest. They're not able to stack the box. They have to worry about Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree, and now Jared Cook, of course. I think that Adrian Peterson would be a great fit there. And actually, even him going to Detroit, I think would also be a great fit. They've done some work on their offensive line this free agency period, and Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback. So it would kind of be a similar situation. So I think either one of those landing spots would be very beneficial to Adrian Peterson, and I would be very interested in scooping him up if he landed there.
I'm still sticking with the Packers. I think that he might end up there, even though the rumors haven't been there yet. They still only have 2 running backs on their roster and currently, and one of them is a former wide receiver. So I still think that might be a spot that he takes a visit to at some point. But I'm with Steve on the 2 spots you mentioned. I think Oakland's the better one, but I think Detroit's a decent landing spot as well. I would get a little nervous with the the number of backs in Detroit. That would be the only issue there, because you obviously Theoretic's going to be your passing down guy, but you're going to talk, you got Zenner and you have Abdullah and other, you just those with that you bring in Peterson. I don't know who's going to do what. It might help keep him fresh and make him relevant for the carries that he does get, but with a limited volume, I don't know that Adrian Peterson's going to be worth as much. So.
We should probably wrap this up with the E.J. Manuel signing by Oakland today. I think that's
huge.
Something that everybody's very excited about. Oakland is really going out there and adding top-level talent.
Listen, they're 1A behind the Patriots this offseason, I think.
It's been impressive. The thing
if we get AP, we move to 1A still.
Yes. All right, so we got a little bit of time here. We're 40 minutes in, and we've talked about some free agents, anything relevant so far to fantasy. Let's talk a little bit about some auction strategy. All of us are currently in auctions, some of us in multiple auctions, some of us in more auctions than we can actually even count. This is the time for dynasty startups, right? A lot of dynasties are getting started up, and whether you're auctioning or you're regular drafting, you got to pay specific attention to how you're constructing a roster when you're building a dynasty. So the 2 questions I have tonight that maybe we can go over really quickly is, number 1, what's your strategy going into an auction? Sal, maybe you can kick us off with this. You have a set budget, and are you assigning a percentage to a position? Are you assigning a percentage to a player? Or, if I had to guess, knowing you probably just kind of wing it and go with the value where you see the value.
I'm a value guy, so you're definitely right about that. What I like to do is see what's being bid up, right? Who's going crazy on what particular players. Obviously, you nominate guys each day. Usually that's how it goes. 1 nom a day from each guy in the league. And let's just use, most of the leagues we're doing a 14-man league. So you're going to get 14 guys put up on the board a day. Right off the bat, guys are going to draw out David Johnson. They're going to draw out Zeke Elliott. They're going to draw out Lev Bell. The big name guys, OBJ, these guys will come out right away because people are going to jump on them. And those prices, I want to see where those players are going. I'll stay in the bidding on them until it becomes ridiculous. And if I see that the 3 main running backs are bid up right away, I'll receiver. Or what's commonplace for us these days is all 3 of the auctions I'm doing right now are all superflex. So that puts a higher relevancy on quarterbacks. And they go quickly and they get priced up quickly. So just like I would do in a draft style, I would wait to see what falls to me and scoop up the value. You're 100% right, Kevin. I will go with what the other people decide to leave on the table for me, and I've gotten that in certain places so far. I'm happy with. If you want to talk specifics, after you guys do some other things about the specific auctions that we're in like now, like the Capitalist Pigs, which is a 50-16 4-copy, we could get into that. But maybe you want to ask Steve what his strategy is going into auctions.
I thought we talked about the fact that no one cares what Steve
Yeah.
has to say. Didn't we discuss
And the
this
fact that you
beforehand?
keep, I think Sal enjoys bringing it up just so we can say it again.
So we can say it
so we
again.
can say, no, Sal, we only care about what you have to say.
Boom! In the
Specifically
face.
brings that kind of stuff up. No, I like to, this is my first auction that I've ever taken part in, is this Capitalist Pigs auction. So it's like, hey, you want to do an auction? Cool. Here's a 14-team, 4-division, 4-copy auction league, and you can try and decipher how prices are supposed to go and what you want to end up bidding on players. But I feel like I kind of did something similar to Sal. I was playing things out. I was seeing what prices were going for where. I kind of set a cap for myself as to how much I wanted to spend on one certain player. And the way that things have really worked out for me, I feel like I've been able to do that. And it's so hard to figure out exactly where the price point is going to have its most value when you're dealing with these 4 copies that we've been dealing with. So I have tried to even my roster out as much as possible. I didn't focus in on one specific position. This is also super flex, like Sal said. So I wasn't too focused on one position. I was more looking at to see what kind of value that I could get as early on as possible, which has seemed to be a pretty good route to go because, as we were talking earlier, we're all kind of happy with the way that our rosters look right now. So for me, I did pretty much. I listened to Sal, as so many people should do, and I went with a value-based approach.
That's brilliant. I'm a little more analytical, I guess, as far as the start of the auction, and not that that's helping me in this one because, as we talked about, it's a beast. With the 56 teams and the 4 copies of players, and the list of players that are nominated are because there's 28 teams that are nominating a player a day, so 28 new players get stuck up in the fold every day. So the list is daunting. But for me, I went into it, and I go into most auctions that with the thought of I have a percentage that I want to pay for each position. And I literally will break it out by each position. So QB1, QB2, QB3, RB1, RB2, RB3, and sort of figure out how many players I'm expecting to get on my roster if you have a set number of players that you have to get, or if you can be flexible. With most dynasties, there's kind of a varying number of players that you can have based on the structure of the league, and I just sort of try to add a value to each of those players, and then even more so break it down by positional group, right? So while my max quarterback may be, maybe I only want to spend, if it's $1,000 budget, maybe I only want to spend 20% on any particular quarterback, but I also want to, if it's a 2 quarterback league, I'm going to spend 20% on one and 20% on another. So that means I really have 40% to play with. So maybe I can kind of work that in somewhere else and sort of downshift somewhere else at that position group to offset, spending more on a particular player if I really want them. The other thing I do, Sal, is I'm a little different from what you were saying, where you're kind of letting it come to you a little bit more. I'm trying to be a little more aggressive with the specific players that I want. So I am going right after them, making sure that I get those players sort of almost no matter what the cost, and figuring I can play with my budget in a few other places to try and make it work. So, but I think, success-wise, you can go either way, right? And it's whatever you want. And for me, the biggest thing is with any fantasy team I own is I want to have players that I like, that I want to root for, and obviously I want to be competitive, but I want to have guys on the team that I like, and so I go harder after those guys than I do of anything else, rather than letting the draft sort of the values come to me.
So I think you could do both, Kevin, because I had specific target players that I wanted, just like you're saying, and I've managed to get them. So these are startups. So if you're in an ongoing dynasty, then you're waiting for the rookie auction to come up, or rookie draft, however you do it. But the specific player I wanted to go for this year was Derrick Henry. if I'm in a startup, Derrick Henry's going into his second season, and he's going to likely split time with DeMarco Murray again this year, barring an injury. But you could get Derrick Henry, rather, a guy who I think next year will leap up into top 5 RB status. You could get him at a fraction of the cost of what the top 3 running backs are going for, and he's the same age, if not younger, than those guys. And I've so far landed him in both startup auctions that I've done this week. And the other guy I was targeting in those leagues is Derek Carr. Again, to your point, you guys you want to root for, I'm a Raider fan, as we've more than well established. But Derek Carr is a young guy who's probably had a good 10 years left in his career, if not more. And could lock in on a young quarterback like that, you'll pay up. And I did pay up. Kevin ended up paying a little bit more. So it's a 4-copy league. So Kevin and I both have Derek Carr in the Capital Pigs League. I paid $185 for him. Kevin paid $212 because I believe that was the 4th and final copy. And I think people realized, all right, they were waiting on that copy and the prices went high, and Kevin was willing to pay up for that guy. And I'm going through that right now in the Supremacy League, where I've been bid up on Derek Carr repeatedly. I'm up to $265, I believe. Right now, the budget is bigger there, $1,500 as opposed to $1,000. So I think you can do both. I think if you see a couple of players you really want to target, you go out there, you target them, you get them, and then you can let the other value come to you. So, like you said, there's so many different ways you could play it. None of them are probably that much better than the other ones. You also have to make the decision on, are you going to punt the first season of a dynasty, or even if it's an ongoing dynasty? Are you going to lay in the weeds a little bit, get some younger players, some guys you think might break out? I went with like Marquise Lee. I went with Will Fuller, guys who might be a year or two away from really breaking out, or maybe will not break out. But you take a little bit of a lesser value for potential, and maybe punt the first year and see what happens for you in the second and third season.
To Sal's point, just really quick, there are literally so many different ways that you could do this that we have in this Pigs auction that we're talking about right now. We've got 270 players nominated off the board. I'm counting at least 5 teams that I can see really quick that have 0 players. They have 0 players so far. Some of these copies are, like you said, Derek Carr, his copy is gone. So some of these players, I mean, they're gone. And money is being spent. I believe we were talking about in the Pigs chat earlier today that over 63% of all the money has been spent so far. And some of these guys on these have 0 players on their team still. So and they're guys that I assume are going to be able to still put something together and be, you'd think relatively competitive, because people are going to start running out of money. You've got guys on the board right now. Andrew Luck is $250. He's 40% or 25% of your budget, and you've still got to fill 9 other spots if you on your team with your remaining $750. So there are just so many different ways that you can put this together. It's pretty daunting. And
that's just the starting lineup, Steve. You're not even talking about bench players and all of that. So yeah, I mean it's definitely daunting. And I can tell you that I'm in the original Pigs. I took over an orphan team this year, and you can look at some of the rosters that came through the first year, and you can see that there were some that, like to your point, Sal, some not tanked, but they saved their money for other places. Nathan Powell, who is a guy I'm sure a lot of you follow on Twitter, he's in that league, and he his team. I remember looking at his team for the first time, and I hope he doesn't take offense to this, but there's hardly an NFL player on it. I mean, he had a lot of Devy picks, he had a lot of rookies, and he had a lot of third and fourth string guys, and his strategy was pretty clear. He didn't draft a ton of guys. He saved a lot of money, so now he has a lot of cash, and in a budget league where the bankroll just continuously rolls over, that could be very valuable, because right now we're picking Devy players, and he's basically able to get whoever he wants. When we go into the rookie draft coming up, he'll basically be able to get whoever he wants. So, it's going to be a long climb back from where he came from, from where his team is. But if he waits 2 or 3 years and kind of manages the cash wisely, he could be a powerhouse for years after that. So, definitely a strategy there, and that kind of, answers a little bit my second question that I had for you, which is what are you doing as far as roster construction So, Steve, what are your thoughts? Are you building for right now? Are you building for the future? Are you trying to do a mix of both? Sal kind of talked about his strategy a little bit, but
Yeah, I did do kind of a mix of both. Right now, I've got my big guys on my team. I got AJ Green, so he's still relatively young wide receiver, and the value that he was going at the time when you had receivers like Mike Evans and OBJ on the board who were going well over just over $200, I was able to get AJ Green for $173. So I started with him, or I started with my Binky Sterling Silver. What the hell is that? Sterling Shepard. And so I started with him. He's a young second-year wide receiver, and so I'm happy to have him on my team for a while. And I tried to do a mix of guys that were established that I felt good with, who I thought their value was being a little undermined because of maybe their age. I got LaShawn McCoy for 109, and then I spent up a little bit for Melvin Gordon, who I ended up getting for 162. So those four guys are really the base of my team. I got some older established guys that are high productive, and they've just got a lot going on for them. And then I've got some younger guys who've shown that they can also be very productive as well. So I kind of went to try to even it out. I don't like losing any year, so I'm not going to try and, just only build for the future. Like you said, in maybe 2 to 3 years, you could be a real powerhouse. It's like, I don't want to be bad for 2 to 3 years. That's not fun for me. So I've tried to get guys I knew that would produce now, and still also try to get guys that would still be beneficial to me quite a few years down the line. And I think that I've done okay getting that mix in, but as where I'm sitting right now, I do not have a quarterback, and that is scary. So that's my biggest issue with my Pigs team right now.
All right, so for me, I think I kind of touched on it a little bit. I'm sort of going for my focus was quarterbacks, right? Because it's a super flex. I want 2 good, solid, young quarterbacks. So for me, I was looking for, you look in your top dynasty rankings for quarterbacks. I wanted a couple of those top 5 guys if I could get them. So I overpaid a little bit, as Sal mentioned. I paid a lot for a Derek Carr. I paid a lot for Russell Wilson. And the reason I did that was because I think that those guys will last for a good, solid, upwards of 10 years on my roster. I won't really have to think about quarterback too much. So I'm expecting to be able to build around that. Now, obviously, I'm going for some other guys that can help me this year as well. But my thought process is really more, I'll do what I can for in the rest of the draft, kind of get guys that I like and hope that I can build a roster that'll be somewhat competitive this year. But at the end of the day, I also want to save some cash and try and get some rookies and some younger guys to fill in those other spots where I'm sort of going to be spending less because of how much I spent on my 2 quarterbacks. So I took a completely opposite approach from you, Steve, because I have 2 good quarterbacks and I should be set for a long time at that position. And obviously my other core positions will be a little weaker than yours because of it, but definitely 2 approaches. Sal, anything to add before we wrap up this podcast?
Nothing to add to these current dynasty auctions. Really, one other thing I'll say about dynasty leagues and the Power Hungry League that Kevin and I are in. Kevin took over an orphan team in that league this year as well. Another strategy I went with, I did draft guys last year that I thought would give me an opportunity to win, and coupled with injuries and just underperforming or whatever, I ended up with only 5 wins. And I decided I had a decent amount of money left to sell a few players off and build up my bankroll going into the rookie auction. So it's a second-year dynasty league, and the key now is to try and get some young players. So I've managed to make a few moves and sell off a few players, and I've gotten myself into the position where I have the second most money in the league. So I'm looking forward to the rookie auction to come in that league, because essentially I could decide which rookie I'd like, and I could pretty much get them at this point. The only other person who has more money than me is that son of a bitch, John Bosch, who will probably bid me up at the last second on all of those rookies that I'm going for. But nonetheless, if I can sell a few more players and get more money than him, maybe I have a shot at my choice of whichever rookie back or wide receiver I would like this year.
Yeah, that's not a bad strategy at all. In fact, I'm hoping that I can maybe sell off a couple of players in that league as well and get some more cash, because the fantasy or the orphan dispersal draft that for that one was rough. I think I came away with some decent players, but it was definitely difficult. So not top notch for sure. That about does it for us today. I will say, really quickly, if you haven't considered taking over an orphan dynasty team, it's a lot of fun. I know a lot of guys don't like it because they like to put their own stamp on teams. They like to draft right from the start, and the draft, drafting any team is obviously a lot of fun. For me, I've taken over several orphan teams this year, and I will say I enjoy it a lot because it's a challenge. I think that you really have to work at it to be able to, because a lot of times, sometimes you may luck into taking over a really good orphan, but for the most part, people leave a team because they're not really into the league anymore, so maybe they weren't really focused on it at the end of the year, so the team's kind of in distress anyway. And to me, I like that. I like the challenge of being able to rebuild. So if you haven't considered doing so, see if you can find an orphan and take one over, because for me, at least, it's a lot of fun. And with that, we will get to our final thoughts. Steve.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Falafel House Fantasy Football Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Falafel House. You can search for us on Facebook and Instagram. You can search for Falafel House there. And, of course, falafelhouse.com. Yeah, that's it. Short and sweet for me. Sal, what do you got?
Shout out to the Dynasty Happy Hour Podcast Network, which we are now a part of. Great group of guys. If you go to their website, you will find the links to all the members that are currently in at Podcast Network, and we are happy to be a part of them. Thank you guys for including us. Kevin.
I just want to remind everyone that if you are going to try to get into some of Scott Fish's Fantasy Cares best ball leagues that he does, go to fantasycares.net. As I mentioned the last time on the podcast, I will be matching donations for the first 10 people to do a $10 best ball tournament with Scott Fish. If you send me a screenshot, either at Wally Central on Twitter, or you can email me. You can falafelhouse@gmail.com. You can send it to that email address. Get me a screenshot of you donating your $10 to enter one of those leagues, and I will sign you up for a second one on me, up to the first 10 people that do it. So definitely,
we really got to put that at the front of the show, because it's so, like Sal said last time you mentioned that, it's so awesome that you're doing that, but we need to make sure that you pay. So we need to put that at the beginning to make sure they get filled up quickly, and that you are forced to put that money up. So I want to make sure that happens, because the kids deserve it.
Well, then you should make sure you mention that at the top of the show next time. Although, are you suggesting that people don't listen to the full show?
I've only made it through a couple.
Very nice. I don't listen to any of them, so that's fine. All right, but no, definitely send me a screenshot somehow of that, and I will get you into a second league for free. So, and with that, we will next week we will do better. I promise. This one was a little tough. I think we're probably
no chance.
I think we're gonna have to start talking some rookies soon, guys. The draft is approaching us, and I know I've said that like 6 times, so I'm hesitant to say it again, but maybe next time we will actually do that. And until that time, Steve, hit the button.